So Rainn Wilson, the former star of The Office, who I'm not aware has done a single thing since then. He played Dwight Schrute on The Office, and he is a wild leftist. I mean, if you read his Twitter feed, the guy is as far left as anybody in American celebrity culture. Well, he tweeted something out, and then he had to apologize for it. Here's what he tweeted. Today I learned you can no longer say nursing or breastfeeding mother. You have to say chest-feeding person. Just FYI. Okay, well, this is actually true. There are people on the left, including the BBC, I believe, which now refers to breastfeeding as chest feeding, as though a normal male chest produces milk, which it does not. And typically, you have to have breasts. Everyone has now been returned to the status of small children who don't know things. It's insane. Again, my baby daughter is 2 and she knows the difference between chest and breasts. Like, this is like, why? What? Because she knows that mommy nursed her using her breasts. Like, what in the actual, what is going on? So Wilson tweets that today he learned that you're not supposed to say nursing or breastfeeding mother. You have to say chest feeding person because some people with breasts are male and some people with chests are female, et cetera, et cetera. He had to delete it. And then he had to tweet an apology, which of course is always the best move because people are very forgiving in our society. So he tweeted out, yesterday I tweeted a mean crack about breastfeeding versus chest feeding. A mean crack. After speaking with some trans friends and educating myself a bit more, I want to apologize for the tweet. It was adding to misinformation and meanness. I'm sorry. And again, this just underscores that for the left, misinformation just means anything they object to. It changes day by day. And you will be punished. You will be forced to do a Maoist struggle session online if you point out that chest feeding is an idiot term for idiots. If you point that out, Rainn Wilson, who is like a Bernie Sanders follower, must now be forced to apologize. But the apology was not enough for some fans. Now do something to materially benefit trans people, one person demanded. Now you're going to have to give us money. Do it. Trans activist Parker Malloy replied to the original tweet saying, Dwight freaking Schrute over here, sputtering nonsense straight up Breitbart. Nobody is telling anyone they have to say chest feeding. That's just not a thing. JFC, really? It's not? Then why do you have to apologize? Really? No one's saying that? Malloy went on to mock the idea of chest feeding being a mainstream word, claiming no organizations were trying to make the general public use the term in place of breast. So this is where we get into the whole, it's not happening and it's good if it is and you must do it or you're a bigot. And because every time the left says, we're not going to make you say chest feeding. 2 minutes from now, this will be the typical term used by the entire mainstream media. And if you refuse to use it, they will call you a bigot and then ban you from social media. And it doesn't matter how powerful you are in our society. If you cross these people, they will destroy you. So for example, let's say that you are a 75-year-old writer who has written more than 300 books and sold more than 500 million copies and is worth $800 million, like James Patterson. And let's say that you point out what is perfectly obvious from the entire publishing industry these days, which is that intersectional credentials win you publication. And if you're a white male, you're at a severe disadvantage in terms of getting published. This is obviously true. It's so true that you have people who are now masquerading as minorities in order to publish books. And then when they're found out, then it's a big scandal. And it's actually happened with a book written by a woman all about illegal migration from Central and Latin America into the United States. And it turned out that she was not Latin American. And this means that she was canceled because of this. The simple fact of the matter is that back in like 1850, you had to have women masquerading as men to get published. Today, you have to masquerade as a member of a sexual, racial, or gender, quote unquote, minority in order to be published. Those are like extra points on your SAT scores at Harvard these days. So this is clearly true. And if you talk to any person in the publishing industry, you know this is true. They openly say that they are seeking intersectional candidates as authors. So James Patterson pointed this out. He said in an interview with the Sunday Times in London, he said, white male authors faced a problem. He said, quote, what's that all about? Can you get a job? Yes. Is it harder? Yes. It's even harder for older writers. You don't meet many 52-year-old white males. Okay, that is statistically true. This is all true. But this is bad. This is very, very bad. So all of the Twitter users went off on him. It was just terrible, just awful. Okay, and then they cite a bunch of surveys done by publishers trying to determine how many of their contributors were white, black, and Hispanic. Okay, but they say that like the New York Times did one of these things in 2020, saying 11% of books written in 2018 were by authors of color. But that's not what Patterson's talking about. He's talking about the authors that are most prized by the publishers who are going to, if you write a fiction book and you submit it to a publishing company, it is harder to get that book published of equal quality if you are white than if you are black. There is an affirmative action program in place of publishers. Everyone in the publishing industry knows this. Every agent will tell you this. As somebody who's quite familiar with the publishing industry, I can tell you this happens to be the case. Patterson is not wrong. I mean, he's intimately familiar with all of this. Okay, but then Patterson had to tweet an apology. Quote, and it's not just an apology for saying, oh, I got the stats wrong, my bad. I guess I misinterpreted. Here's what he had to say. It's amazing. Quote, I apologize for saying white male writers have trouble finding work is a form of racism. Okay, that's even further. I'm right. White male writers are having trouble finding work, but that's not racism. If they're being discriminated against because they are white males, that is not racism, according to James Patterson. I absolutely do not believe that racism is practiced against white writers. Please know that I strongly support a diversity of voices being heard in literature, in Hollywood, everywhere. So now it's not just that he's not even claiming that he was wrong. He's claiming that it can never be racist to deny a white male a job. It cannot be racist to discriminate against white males. That's not possible. Okay, when the moral gap in the country is growing wider by the day, that is not going to come back together. It's not going to come back together. How's this for a title? Ben Shapiro Show subscriber destroys like button with clicks and logic. I'd watch that. Make it happen, gang.